Hello, welcome and a very good evening. Tonight we want to look at this machine here, or rather down there. I'll show you the box itself in a little while. And it's the Commodore 16. It is a machine from the mid-80s where Commodore tried to introduce a whole line of very cheap business-oriented machines, but in the meantime Commodore's founder Jack Tramiel left the company and then everything got restructured. In the end we only got more or less two machines, the C16 and the +4 with 16 kilobytes and 64 kilobytes of RAM and a very special dedicated chip called the TED chip. And we will go into detail on all of this a bit later. But for anyone who's interested, the designer of the machine, Bill Hurd, also wrote a book which deals a lot with this stuff. It's called Back into the Storm. And yeah, you can check it out if you want to know about the history of this particular machine. But for now we will have a look at one or two games that run on this machine and its limitations, because the machine has only 16 kilobytes of RAM, so a lot of stuff doesn't run on this, and there are a lot of homebrew games and demos for the +4 range of machines, but the C16 needs to have an upgrade to 64 kilobytes to be able to do all that, and we will upgrade the machine. But right now we are at 12 kilobytes free basic memory, and let's see what we can do with that. So now that we've seen what the C16 looks from the outside, especially compared to the C64, let's open up this box, although it has never been opened before, and of course that's kind of a sad thing, but I think giving it the upgrades will make it so much more useful. And after all, we want to use this nice machine and play games and run demos on it. And this is the stuff that we need. So three things. First of all, we got these little sticky heat sinks here, which are actually for the Raspberry Pi, but we can put several of them together on a single chip. We will put these on the TED chip and on the main CPU, because both of them run relatively hot in the TED series of machines, so the C16 and the +4. And for that reason, and to prolong its life, its useful life, we want to install these heatsinks, just to make sure that it lasts hopefully longer than we are around, and we don't have to open it again to replace either of those, because the TED chip is getting rarer by the day. There might be an FPGA substitution at some point, but it's nicer to have the original one. The CPU can be replaced with a kind of adapter with a regular 6502, but also I would rather like to have the original CPU in there. The second thing that we want to use is this piece here, which connects to the two joystick ports on the side of the machine. And it lets us use regular C64 joysticks, or rather the 9-pin Atari style joysticks. And this is more than just a simple passive adapter. It has a couple of chips on here, and let's zoom in. Hopefully you can see that. Get some light over here. These are this way around, we can see it. These are 74LS244 surface mount variants, and they're basically buffering and the inputs, which helps in protecting the TED chip, which handles all the I/O. So when you unplug or plug in the joysticks, you can't that easily damage the TED chip anymore, which is a good thing, because many of those adapters are purely passive, and I read on the internet that it might be dangerous. And this thing here just simply plugs into the side, which is pretty neat actually, and you can use two joysticks at once. And the star of the show obviously is this piece of equipment here. We could have just put in two 32 kilobyte RAM chips on their own. So these are in particular, let's again zoom in, 41464 ICs, even matching ones more or less from NEC, which I will upgrade the machine to a full 64 kilobytes, which makes it more or less +4 compatible and will run a lot of games and demos, and that's what I actually want. But this solution is pretty nice because it's fully reversible. You don't have to cut any traces. There's this nice cable that you have to run on the board, and you have to install this socket, I think. Also, there's a switch which lets you choose between 16 and 64 kilobytes, which is extremely nice. All you have to do is you have to desolder 4 chips, the old RAM chips, plus the 257s that are on the board, and it comes already with replacement ones. And in the usual mode you have to cut a trace or something, or run some wires, which is not necessary with this one. And you can totally reverse the mod by just taking this thing out and putting in the original ICs if you are so inclined. But I think we will leave it at that, because you can switch to the 16K configuration if you have some kind of old software that only runs in 16K mode. But it's probably not that often that you will need that. Also, it comes with very nicely machined sockets. All of this stuff was probably the deluxe edition of getting things done, but at this point I think we want to do the best possible solution for this machine. And yeah, I will link to the shop where I got this stuff in the video description. These I got off of eBay. You can find like hundreds of sellers that have these, so just search for those. But this comes from a shop in Hungary. Yeah, and let's see how it works. We'll open up the machine, we'll desolder the 4 chips, install the sockets, and then we can install the mod. So I hope everything goes according to plan. Let's do it. Okay, we're in, and as you can already see, it's a pretty tiny board. A lot of free space here. The keyboard is more or less a C64 keyboard with slightly different layout. There's the LED connector. Red goes to the left, black to the right, just for reference when we plug it in again later. The keyboard connector has brown on the right and white and black to the left. Also important to remember that. Also, I don't know if I can unplug this easily. Yes, I can. And this should lift up like that, which is a good thing. Then we have the very, very cheap RF shield. The board looks to be pretty pristine, I would say. It's in 250443 revision A. There's also a PCB number 251789. I'm not sure about those. The 8360 is from 49th week of 84. The 8501 is 11th week of 1989. That's pretty late. That's weird. Maybe it was replaced, but the sticker says otherwise. Not sure what to make of this. I have to look up the production dates of this stuff. This looks a bit corroded, which is fine. I think this is over the decades. Gets a bit nasty, but everything is very clean. All the other chips seem to be from 1984, it seems. So that seems fine. So where do we have? Here are the RAM chips. These have to get desoldered. Here are the 275s. So we have to desolder the RAM chips, put in the new ones, and then desolder the 257s. We probably have to bend the capacitors a bit to the side, I guess. This here looks funky. 2 diodes with a piece of insulating tube or something. Everything looks built to a cost, I would say. The fuse looks good, of course, because the whole machine works. The reset switch works as expected. Oh, there's a big fat resistor here, 5 watts, 20 ohms. I think I read about that in the book by Bill Hurd. I think this was kind of a late to the production fix that they put this in for some kind of stability reasons. I have to look it up. It was some weird reason. A bigger seat sink on this voltage regulator here, which I guess is fine because the machine is working. So yeah, we should definitely install some nice heat sinks on these. I think I will put 2 on the 8501 and 3 on the TED chip. That should do it. I'm a bit worried here about the production date of the chip here. Maybe it was some leftover boards or something. Yeah, anyway, let's unscrew this. Not sure what the arrow here is pointing to. All in all, it's a tiny little computer, I must say. The plan was, I think, originally to put it in a different case. Okay, the screws look fine. So maybe it really has never been touched before. They look pretty okay. So from my understanding, this could have ended up in a C116 as well, maybe. Not quite sure. Ah, there are another 2 screws over there. So let's get rid of them. Question is, will we remove the RF shield? I'm definitely for keeping the shield, because it's original cardboard from Commodore. So yeah, let's put it to the side. Let's look at the bottom. The typical stuff here that you see all over the wrinkly copper that you see on the cheap Commodore boards. I'm not sure if this is from the wave soldering or if that's something from the copper. I've got no idea. Yeah, but anyway, this is the board. Let's put it down. This is the, what do you call it? Whatever. For the ports, the shield, the guard, I don't know. And there it is in all its glory. Let's zoom in a bit. Yeah, looks pretty okay. I don't see any problems so far. So let's not destroy it, but rather let's try and install this beast. It's going to go right here. Yeah, we definitely need to get those capacitors a little bit out of the way. We have to fold them over, I guess. They're easy enough to replace if they break, but it will go something like this. And the RAM ICs will go here, and we will of course save the 16K or the 8K per chip for future use. Who knows who will need this as a replacement. Alright, let's get desoldering. Three of the 4 chips are desoldered and they went pretty easily. I had to add quite a lot of fresh solder, which totally makes a difference. I wouldn't have believed it, but adding fresh solder from the bottom definitely helps with the removal. But the second RAM chip is a bit stubborn, so we will have a go at all of the legs once more. And I'm thinking about replacing those caps here, because they are a bit too large anyway. And I scratched this one, and I don't want to risk any damage to the computer itself. So maybe I'll just replace those with some 100 nanofarad bypass capacitors. That should do it, because that's what those things are. Yeah, so let's try to get this out and then replace the capacitors. So all the relevant ICs are out. Now we're gonna place 4 sockets here. I also replaced this capacitor, which I scratched a bit. And afterwards we can install the board, and we have to put a wire over here or something. I need to check the instructions for that, but right now we can first put in all the sockets. Alright, it's a bit noisy due to the desoldering station. The mod is installed. I added one more decoupling capacitor over here because the disk capacitor was really too large. It wouldn't fit under there anyway. So yeah, I replaced that. It's a different brand, but both are 100 nanofarads. That should be fine. Furthermore, I added 2 little blobs of solder over here, fresh solder. We need to desolder this to make it hold there, and then we will add this little socket over here, which we will attach this wire to. These are the extra address lines to get to 64 kilobytes of RAM. So yeah, let's quickly do that, and then we can go and test the machine. One last thing that is annoying me is that this Commodore 16 sign is actually peeling off very slightly. It is made from metal, I think. So I'm gonna put some fast-acting super glue in here. Just a drop. And that should hopefully put it into place. Careful that you don't glue your own finger to the machine, which would be probably not the best thing, even though you're a Commodore fan. But walking around with a C16 stuck to your finger would not be the best thing, I guess. Yeah. First of all, let's take a look at the games that people would play back in the day when the C16 came out. For that we will load the SD2IC file browser, which you can just do by typing load FB,8, and then it will automatically select the FB16 program for the C16, the +4. There's variants for all kinds of Commodore computers on there. Then we go to the C16 subdirectory, and I have 2 games on there, the first one being Tutti Frutti, which is a rather neat little game that is supposedly one of the best, and it spawned a few successes, mostly with new levels. And the whole game I would describe as a crossover between Dig Dug, the arcade game, and also something like Boulder Dash maybe. You're a super strawberry and you have to avoid the acid apples, and during the whole levels you always have to collect all the cherries, avoid falling red apples or strawberries or whatever that is, and at the same time also avoiding the green acid apples. You can shoot bullets every couple of seconds, or you can crush your enemies by falling, well, not rocks, but those red apple or strawberry things. And once you cleared either all the cherries or killed all the enemies, you can advance to the next level. There are different game mechanics in there, and it's a really nice game. Second game on the list is Tom Thumb, which is kind of a platformer, and yeah, it's pretty neat, but I didn't quite understand it, and the jumping is, or the controls are very weird, and well, it doesn't play as well as Giana Sisters or Super Mario, for example. And you can die a lot by all the traps that are on there. It might be a good game for kids because there is not that much action. You have usually quite a lot of time to get around enemies and stuff, but timing is crucial or you will be poked by the enemies, etc. I didn't particularly like this game, but I can see if you didn't have anything else that it's a pretty neat thing, and it's colorful, and well, it's sort of like a bit like Pitfall or Indiana Jones maybe. Next up is a modern game, a horizontal shoot-'em-up game called Alpha Ray, made by one of the most prominent C16 demo groups called Bauknecht. And you can play it for free, you can download it from the usual demo sites, but there's also, I think, a boxed copy available somewhere, but I don't have that yet. And the amazing thing here is that you get all the graphical effects that you know from the C64, but on the much worse TED chip. So there's parallax scrolling, there's sprites, and lots of colors and lots of action, which is amazing for a tiny little machine like this, which doesn't have any of that. So sprites and all the other stuff need to be emulated, sort of. But yeah, it actually works pretty good. It reminds me a little bit of Soul Force on the C64, and the whole game seems to be in a sort of better version, at least the copy that I found, because there doesn't seem to be any scoring, and you seem to be having infinite number of lives. But the enemies work, there's a lot of explosions, there's a nice soundtrack and sounds, and the graphics actually look pretty amazing. It looks better than many of the C64 games. You can see some artifacts due to the limits of the graphics chip. There's some, well, when stuff overlaps you see blocks from the character grid and things like that. But all in all, I must say it's a pretty amazing demo of what the C16 is actually capable of doing. And yes, you need the 64 kilobyte expansion, of course. This doesn't run on a stock C16. Next up is Majesty of Sprites, which is a jump-and-run platformer style of game with a very nice background story and colorful graphics. Again, this was made by Bauknecht, who seem to be holding the C16 and +4 scene alive single-handedly almost. And well, with good reason, because their games actually push the C16 very hard. So you get 4-way scrolling platformer here, which is also, I would say, pretty child compatible, because you basically just jump on your enemies' heads, just like you know from Super Mario and stuff. The setting is a fantasy world and you're kind of a witch and you have to collect fairies. There's actually 2 different chapters in the game, which are slightly different. Timing again is key. You have to collect a number of fairies in every level to be able to advance. The game also has very nice music and sound effects, is very colorful, and I think this is actually pretty impressive and shows what the C16 and the +4 could have been if there was more support maybe back in the day. and if it had arrived at the price point that it was intended to be released, like something around $50 to $100, then it would have been a very nice home computer with actually pretty good gaming capabilities. And of course, there's also a lot of going on in the demo scene, that is, showing off all the programmer's capabilities, graphics, music, and all the latest and greatest. And of course, Bauknecht is there also pretty dominantly on this platform. This demo is called Thrive, and yeah, it's a nice collection of visuals, 3D rotating cubes, plasma, and many more. And I must say, yeah, the C16 is one hell of a capable little machine, and I do like it very much. And I will close with one more demo from Bauknecht and the Electronic Knights called Rocket Science. The Electronic Knights we already know from the Amiga, for example, for the Hologon demo, which was distributed on floppy disks last year. And this one here is actually also pretty magnificent. There are a lot of great effects that show what the TED can show off on the screen. And yeah, the music of course is much more limited than what the C64 could achieve with the SID chip. But still, I do like this production a lot, and I think, yeah, it makes for a very nice and challenging demo machine, I guess. So that was the upgrade of the Commodore 16, which was a very interesting machine back in the day. Sadly, it wasn't very successful, and I do understand why that is the case, because it was more expensive than initially thought, and it was incompatible to the C64, which didn't help its adoption. But I still think, from a historic standpoint, it's a very interesting machine with a very interesting story. And if you want to read from what this device could have been or where it came from, do consider reading Back into the Storm by Bill Hurd. It's a bit of a chaotic tale, literature-wise, but it's still a very interesting book. So I do recommend having a look if you're a fan of Commodore and want to know more about the history. The machine itself today is still a lot of fun because there are new demos and games coming out for it. Better games probably than back in the day. And with 64 kilobytes of RAM, there is a lot more stuff that you can do with the machine. Although it is partially worse specs than the C64, has more colors, but the hardware sprites and stuff is missing. But still, there's a lot of nice games, especially in the homebrew scene. For example, the Queen's Footsteps here is a C16 plus 4 version. It's a text adventure. Okay, that doesn't really utilize the graphics functions. And of course, Attack of the Petsky Robots has gotten a port for the plus 4 in the C16. Sadly, on my machine, there is no user port here, which the C64 usually has and even the VIC-20 has. So I can't use the SNES adapter for playing with the Super NES controller, but it plays pretty nice using the keyboard as well. So that's a good thing. The joystick adapter is definitely also a good addition because it lets you use all the standard Atari 9-pin joysticks, and you don't have to find one of the rare C16 compatible joysticks. So that's pretty okay. Anyway, I think this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Share, like, and subscribe as usual. You can support me on Patreon. Links down below in the video description. And until then, I hope to see you in the next video. Have a very nice evening.